Hey, welcome back. This is Harriet Clooney for Scrap Cooking, and this is the show where we're gonna do zero waste with all of our veggies and show you how to do all sorts of fun things with all the other pieces. Today's episode is gonna be corn. It's corn season and it's so delicious, but the kernels are not the only thing that you can use. There's many different things. So today I'm gonna show you how to do dry some corn silk for corn silk tea and dry the husks to make tamales, and we're gonna make a stock out of the corn cob. And then at a later date, we'll make a corn chowder. All right, so right before we get started, how about you hit that like button and subscribe, and then you'll be able to keep up to date on all the new episodes and recipes. And now we are going to go on with our corn. So the first thing we're gonna do is actually cut off the top. So it's kind of oxidized and kind of gross. So we're gonna do that. And that's pretty much the only part we're going to put in the compost. Now we're going to carefully remove the husks and this one. And the bits of husk that we don't use, we're gonna put in our stock. So, but we want to be gentle because we actually want these corn husks to be whole. We don't want to rip them. Oh, got two there. There we go. Well, we're getting there. Yeah, so traditionally in Mexico, they use the corn husk to make tamales, which uses masa harina as a dough, which is corn flour that's been treated, boiled in calcium hydroxide, and then boiled into a paste and then dried to make a flour. And that is mixed with fat and baking powder, and then they take the husks and they wrap the dough in it, and then they steam them. They also usually add some savory fillings, could be veggie, could be meat, and they are delicious. So I'm gonna cut off the end of this, and it's not going in the compost. That's actually gonna go in our stock, but I think this is gonna be easier. There we go. And that we're gonna dry. And then we're just gonna keep our corn in a bowl for now, and these guys, we're just gonna cut the tops of them off. That's gonna go in our stock. Any of the little tiny bits we're going to keep for our stock. That one can go entirely. Now we're going to soak these guys in some water. So we've got a few more corn cobs to go. All right, so another way that's good to get the husks off, which is easier, is to cut the bottom off, going right through the cob, so that you can see that the bottom is not attached anymore. So where they meet at the bottom is taken off, which we'll use for stock. And now the husks are gonna come off a lot easier by going in the side, kind of moving your finger around to find where the new one starts. There we go. My corn silk. Just gonna spread it out as much as I can. It doesn't have to be like painstakingly separated, it'll dry. So if you've got a gas oven, you're just gonna wanna put it in with the pilot running overnight and it should be good to go. And then if you have an electric oven, you'll put it down to as far down as you can, and we're gonna put a little tea towel in between it and the door. And that will keep the airflow circulating, but also keep it low enough that we're just drying it, not cooking it. All right, so I'm gonna throw this in the oven. Got our corn husks, and they're a bit dirty. They came from the farmer's market, which we love, but we're just gonna fill it up with water and let it sit for about 20 minutes. And then we'll drain them and we'll put them in the oven overnight as well. Now that it's full, I'm gonna give it a good jostle. And then the dirt is gonna fall to the bottom. While that's hanging out, I am going to take the corn kernels off the cob. So the best way that I find is to get a nice big bowl. If we cut corn kernels off of the cob on just your cutting board, they fly everywhere and you get corn everywhere. So I like to put it in the bowl, and then the edge of the bowl will catch the majority of your corn kernels that are flying everywhere. So you just have to be careful that it's kind of steady, and the cut bottom of your corn cob actually will help that a lot. So we're gonna angle the knife into the cob, but not all the way in. And we're just sort of gonna have them fall off. So now we're just gonna cut these cobs so they'll fit in my pot a bit better. And just be careful because it's quite thick, so the knife going through it is, sometimes you gotta really but you could also break it. Got some beautiful leeks from the farmer's market. And one thing about farmer's market food, and you should wash up your vegetables anyway, but is that we've got lots of dirt. But that's okay. We're gonna give it a nice wash. And so most people only use the white part of the leek, but I like the whole leek. And so we're gonna use the leaves in our stock and the bottoms for our chowder. So we're gonna take them off. They don't need to be tiny, so we're just gonna cut them into chunks like this. And then we are going to put it in this bowl that we're gonna fill with water. All right, so the dirt is heavier than the leeks or the husks themselves, so they float to the top and the dirt falls to the bottom. All right, so we're just gonna let those hang out. And we're just gonna pick out the ends. That is the only part that we're gonna compost, and every other part of it is gonna get put in our stock. And we are going to give this guy a rinse as well, but they're sort of the outside leaves, so they don't really need to sit as much. The dirt will kind of just come off. And so everything is gonna go in my pot. That's got my corn cobs, some husks, some leek bottoms. And we're just gonna fill this up just until it's covered. And we're gonna put this on our burner. And we're just gonna bring it to a boil. And as soon as it comes to a boil, then we're gonna turn it down. And we're gonna let it go for about 45 minutes. So my corn husks have discarded their dirt at the bottom of here. So I'm gonna take them out. I'm gonna put them in this other bowl just to let some of the excess water drip out. So I've got a tray of corn husks that are dried out are patted dry, and now we're gonna put them in the oven. Then we're gonna add my corn husks. We're gonna add it to the oven with my corn silk and do that overnight. And yeah. It's been 45 minutes. My stock with the leek tops and the corn cobs and the corn husks is ready to go. So I'm just gonna take this strainer and I'm really just gonna pour this guy over it. This is a bit of a heavy pot. Okay, we have a couple rogue pieces. I'm just gonna pull those out. It's beautiful corn stock that we're gonna use for our corn chowder. So we're just sort of layering all the flavor, and we're using every part of the corn. So we're gonna put this to cool. And if you were gonna not make the corn chowder today, you could cool this down all the way down, and then put it into deli containers or a container of your choice and put it in the freezer to use at another date, or put it in the fridge. And it doesn't last super long in the fridge, maybe just a couple days, but it is super delicious and will really enhance the chowder that we're gonna make. So we have let our corn silk dry overnight in the oven at the lowest setting, and it is completely dry and kind of almost like a nest. So we're just gonna, it's kind of like cotton candy too. Yeah, you want it to be super, super light and fluffy and cotton candy-like, that you know it's dry, and then you'll be able to store it. It might actually be good. We're just gonna cut it up a little bit. Because it'll be easier to put in a tea bag. There we go. Now I put a little piece of paper towel in this little container. You can put it in a small Ziploc too, that works. I just like to put a piece of paper towel just in case there's condensation, so. There, now we've got some dried corn silk to use as a medicinal tea, but always check with your doctor. Make sure that's something that might be right for you. And that'll sort of hang out in your cool, dry place in your pantry for a couple months. All right, so that's the corn silk. And the other thing we had in the oven overnight was our corn husks. It sounds pretty good, but we want to make sure that, because they're kind of rolled up, we want to make sure they're light. So we're going to make one a sacrificial lamb. Good. So you can kind of hear it's completely dried. So these are good to be dried and put away. So to make tamales, which I will show you another episode. So again, I like to just err on the side of caution with anything that's dry, just in case temperature fluctuates, we get some condensation in there, it'll protect it. We get as much air out of there as possible, but we don't want to crush it because we want them to stay intact as a piece. And there we have it. So we can keep those also in a cool, dry place for a couple months and use them when we're ready to make tamales. So our stock is cooled and it's delicious. Unseasoned, but delicious. But if you're gonna use it right away, like we are in the next episode for corn chowder, then we wouldn't necessarily put it in liters. But if you don't have time to make chowder today, or anything else you would like to do with your stock, then I would put it into containers. Well, like I said earlier, it's not gonna last too long in the fridge, so it's better to put it in the freezer. But if you're freezing things, you need to make sure that you leave at least a ½ inch at the top so that when it freezes, it expands a little bit so it doesn't explode the container. But yeah, so please tune into our chowder episodes. You can see how we put this to good use. And thanks so much for watching, and thanks to the Urban Element for the beautiful kitchen, and we'll check you next time.